I am delighted to welcome up to the stage our colleague, Wael Ghonim. He is a computer engineer, an internet activist, and a social entrepreneur. And he is best known, among other things, for the role he played in helping to spark the Egyptian revolution. Wael, welcome.
My daughter told me to stop saying and I'm just thinking about it. So the word tahrir, I come from Egypt and I speak Arabic. Arabic is my first language. And then in Arabic, I came to realize as I grew up that the language is far more complicated than we think it is, than we give it credit for. So the word tahrir means to liberate. It also means liberation, but interestingly enough, it means to publish. And I thought the other day, why is to publish has anything to do with to liberate? What's the connection? And the connection is very obvious, right? Because when you share knowledge, when we disseminate information across us, the ability for us to be able to work collectively and do something productive increases over time. So I just think that thoughts are just like babies. Think of them in that way. They are just inside of you. Before they happen, nothing happens. And then when the thoughts start getting generated, it start getting whatever the nature of your brain is influencing those thoughts, right? So you start, your condition. If you are happy, your thought is going to be a happy thought. It's going to be more optimistic. If you're sad, your thought is going to be a sad thought. It's going to be more pessimistic. But then as you get the thought out of your brain, you are actually liberating the thought. The thought is born and it's no longer yours because it becomes part of the collective. Because you can no longer control it. And ironically, the more you try to control the thought after it gets out of you, the more you actually lose the thought, lose control of the thought. And the more you try and allow everybody to entertain the thought and take it and play with it and be offended by it and be happy with it and be excited about it and modify it in a way that you do not want the thought to be, the more you're actually calmed down and you understand that the thought is okay. And it's just like the bird. It is just learning how to adapt. It is learning how to improve. The problem in the world today is that we're all becoming thought police, including myself. And we're thought police not just for others, because that's the scam. We're thought police for ourselves. We use our logic as our imagination engines start going somewhere. You have a set of probably infinite number of blocks that you use in your head to tell yourself, oh, that doesn't work. But reality is, I don't know, how many of you are familiar with the butterfly effect? Oh, wow, that's quite a good group. For the rest of you, the butterfly effect is basically, you should read about it on Wikipedia. The Wikipedia page is a great one. I will try to explain it, but I'm not the best one to represent it. The idea of it basically is that everything that happens, including the very tiny small details in our lives, impact our life significantly, but not only that, impacts the lives of everyone significantly. You have been impacting my life, and I have been impacting your life. We just don't know about it. We have no way to know about it because the world is so interconnected. The animals that we are cruel to, or the people that that die in suffering, have a lot to do with our own personal security. Because our security is not in isolation. That's what we have understood through thousands of years of evolution. That's why we end up working collectively. Our security is a function of everybody feeling secure. So we engage in thought policing ourselves, and eventually we engage in thought policing others. And by the way, the most interesting, funniest trick in the game, everybody think that they are not thought policing, including the people you think that they are thought policing, because they also think that you are thought policing. And we end up fighting with each other. about who has the right to police, because who has the moral high ground, who has the moral standard that is ought to be copied by everyone else. And that's another scam. That's another problem. Because I'm a different person than you. There is no way you can relate to my experiences. You only relate to the words which already reduce the experience, because my words come from my logic. My experience is far more in depth than the logic that I use, because my logic is limited with the words that I know, right? If I only know about 10 emotions, and then what happens when I experience any emotion, I categorize it as one of the 10 emotions. If someone learns about 20 emotions, they just happen to become a little bit more advanced. Why? Because they're going to be able to identify better with more accuracy. Everything could be reduced to an infinite abstract, and everything could be basically zoomed in to an infinite level of details. And life is just a matter of the balance. You just go, you need to be able to zoom in when you need to, so that you look at the important details, but you also need to zoom out when you need to, so that you look at the big picture. Okay, so this is all like stuff that we all agree on. What is it that we don't agree on? Let's start with democracy. I am a democracy activist that understand that democracy doesn't work. And that's why I'm a democracy activist, because if it doesn't work, I would have been doing something else. But the fact that it doesn't work should not make us go after people and claim that people are bad. It's just that the system doesn't work. Because the system is supposed to secure all of us. And when the system is not securing all of us, the insecure of us start doing things to secure themselves. And if the system doesn't provide, like for example, if someone feel victimized because they were actually a victim of something that have happened to them in their lives, and there is no mean for them to improve their level of like emotional security by being taken care of by the society that caused the trauma, they are going to have an expression of that trauma. And that expression would be in anger, or it would be in depression, or it would just take different shapes and forms. It will always come out. And when humans like us start taking more control and more power and ruin the load balancing game, because it's a load balancing game. The idea of the game is that if the knowledge is distributed in this whole, if the knowledge is distributed, my death will become less relevant. If the knowledge is centralized, someone's death is becoming more damaging. Probably, I would not say that about myself, but I would just think that at the end of the day, this is what I'm doing on stage. I've learned a few things that are, a product of my experience, and what I'm trying to do is to share them with you. And the reason why I'm sharing them with you, because they should not live with me. I have to liberate them. Whether they are wrong or right, because I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm just giving you what I'm thinking. Funny enough, I actually thought about should I prepare a talk or not, because we are trained to prepare talks. We are told to actually prepare a paper and have an objective, and I don't want to have an objective. My objective is to connect with you. That's my objective, because if we connect, we don't know enough about each other. I don't know enough about you and your experiences. Why would I have an objective before I even know who are you? Isn't that a bit arrogant? But I know one thing in this setup, which is you have agreed to give me some of your time. And I'm going to be gentle enough to provide you some value out of it, of what I understand. I understood that the opposite of injustice is not justice. The opposite of injustice is not justice. Justice is the norm. The opposite is I don't know, over justice. English is not. Can someone help us with that thought? Can someone in the audience tell us what would be the opposite of injustice if you overcompensate the people who have a problem with justice? Huh? Justice overload. Justice overload. I don't think so. There is no justice overload. I think it's just like you give generously. The meaning of it, you give generously. Because if you are trying to be just at a time where there are a lot of people who are experiencing unjust, they're barely going to be able to make it, because the balance is not you will never be able to fix the balance. And the balance, by the way, is not just outside of us. The main balance which is the part that you are responsible of, is the balance inside of you. So let's stop talking about the outside of us and let's talk a little bit about what's inside of us. I just realized that a lot of my activism is driven by anger, and I was trained to be angry, and I was also trained to be attention-seeking, and a lot of my activism was also influenced by my attention-seeking. And now in retrospect, I'm not judging any of the people here because everyone is on their own journey. I would not have identified with myself as an attention seeker before as I was engaged in the action. And therefore, I don't think there was some moral dilemma there. I'm okay with myself because as soon as I realized it, I stopped it. Because I realized that when you disconnect with your soul, you try and feed it with whatever. You know, attention is one of them. And if you try and feed with attention in a valuable way, thank you, and we appreciate it. But that's not good for you. It's good for the world probably. Sometimes you will get a little bit angry and do things that are not best for the world. But overall, you're going to add value, so thank you. But it's not good for you. Because at the end of the day, attention seeking is a virus. It's a drug. You will start wanting X, then you want 10X, then you want 100X, and then attention eventually becomes a fake currency. It's not really connected to value because think about it this way. Initially, attention and value start here. If you provide value, you deserve the attention, so people grant you attention. But then there are some people here who are very desperate, who are very excited, who are told that if they're not seeking attention, they're not doing the good thing. The whole system is pushing you to become an attention seeker. So under that influence, you validate based on attention seeking. So for example, I had to be in peace with the fact that I'm stressed out in this conversation. Because in the past, I was not in peace with it. It's okay. I don't know any of you. I am a human. I have an animal side in me, and I understand that all these people looking at me is something, you know, kind of not average, right? So at the end of the day, I want to become in peace with myself on that one, and I want to become in peace with myself for being an attention seeker, because I'm still an attention seeker. I'm just working on it. I'm just being more aware of it. I understand when it happens, and I know not to optimize for it. So the real problem is that a lot of our activities are driven by surface-level emotions, because a lot of the market is driving us to do surface-level emotions activities. They're telling you that happiness is a chocolate that you bite. Happiness is a chocolate that you bite. That an experience is going to an island and sit down in front of the sea and look at your phone, and you're just an education is basically teaching you how to restrict yourself and not be like that bird that is learning. And you know, I meant to put this, and I had to say I really entertained myself listening to your emotional outburst. Because at the end of the day, I know what would happen because I watched the video, but the first time I had the same emotional, reaction to it. Like, oh my God, this bird is dead. That's so cruel. How did their parents do that? But it's just like, I don't know enough. Just like how we don't know enough about ourselves. There is infinite amount of energy that's inside each one of us, and we are being taught and by legacy systems. And by the way, do not get me wrong, I actually think that we need to keep the system, whatever that system is. We should not kill any system. We should improve systems. We should push systems in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, the mere fact that the system still exists means it's still providing a value no matter how bad it is. It is not up to you to decide what reality should look like. Reality is deciding itself on itself. It is up to you to observe reality, and when it doesn't match with your expectations, you take that as a signal to look inside of you. And that's why I think the real journey is actually inside of you. It's not outside of you. You take that signal and you try and ask yourself, what was wrong with my expectations? What was in my logic that basically led to me not seeing that as a normal trajectory? And by the way, just a second, I'm not saying as accept reality for whatever that is. I mean, accept reality for whatever that is because it's reality, but you get in the game to change it. You get in the game to interact with it. You get in the game to influence it. but there is a condition. The more you want to be able to be efficient in it, the more you need to understand it better and observe better. But how can you observe reality if you can't even observe yourself? If you can't know that part of your behavior that brings your mom crazy or your dad's crazy is actually something that you need to consider changing, because that behavior has some truth to it. There is something, because if you believe in your cause, you want to believe that at the end of the day, like after this, I would love for you, I keep my email, and you see it? Do you see the email, everybody? I'd love for you to help me and guide me about my method of delivery, because it's not optimal, but it doesn't have to be. It could become better. I could connect with you in a better way. I could learn how to pass my points in a more organized way, and I'd love for you to tell me about that, because I need to fix that aspect inside of me. Because whatever that I'm projecting now is full of like the positive signals that whatever I have, and the negative signals too. I'm not able to identify all of them, but I'm able to tell you that that at the end of the day, I just realized one thing in life, that the puzzle outside is just meant to distract you from the puzzle inside. And the puzzle inside is the real one you have to deal with. And when you start dealing with, in all honesty, while seeking the truth, you start to fix the puzzle outside automatically. Or as I would say, it will start fixing itself for you. That's when some of us experience, these things sometimes. Like, you get a message from, you were walking and you're down and everything is wrong, and you have no idea how things will improve. And then things just start improving. And people tell you that this is a coincidence. They just don't know what they're talking about. They just have not read the Wikipedia page about the butterfly effect, because there is no such a thing as a coincidence. It's just our ignorance is what makes us think it's coincidence. Just like how our ignorance is driving a lot of how the world is running right now. Our ignorance mixed with our inability to connect with our souls to be able to improve ourselves. And by the way, let me tell you, if the world has a problem, it means all of us has a problem. It means all of us has a problem inside, including those who are working their heart off to fix the problem. Because maybe there's a more efficient way for them to work their heart off, because there are a gazillion ways to reach a solution. And I know now enough that the best way to reach a solution is the way that brings people together, including your biggest enemies. And if you can imagine, just imagine, do not work on, if you can just imagine your biggest enemies on the table with you, and you know how to tell them what Mandela told his enemies: dear enemy, we love you. Because he really gets it. The enemy is just a reflection that there's a lot of polarization in the world right now. It's kind of like the temperature. The temperature on Earth and the temperature inside of us tells us a lot about the health of our souls and the health of the soul of the land. If the temperature on Earth is high, that means it's bad. If it's low, that means it's equally bad. If our temperature is high, it's bad. If our temperature is low, it's bad. Life is really all about the balance. And that equilibrium is actually an internal thing. It's not an external thing. No matter what happens outside of us, there is something that inside of us that know how to balance with it, if you use the right logic. I'll end with a thought where I started. It's just a thought. God is a thought. Right? Like God at the end of the day, none of us experience God. There are some of us who believe in it, in God, some who don't. Some are Christians, Muslims, Jews, agnostic, atheists, whatever it is. At the end of the day, they all agree that there is one thing that is common among all of us. We have all entertained a God thought. Not only that, the people who loved God the most and the people who hated God the most throughout history are ones that are remembered. And we remember them from the first day of Adam, because at the end of the day, you remember the name Adam because the name Adam is connected to the name God. And I was thinking the other day, assuming, if I'm not pushing religious beliefs, but assuming if we want to entertain a story, how did Adam tell his first son about his experience with God? How did he formulate it, given that the logic was still very primitive, because our logic is way more advanced right now? How did he communicate, and how did the story of God kept evolving over time? Whether, as I said, you believe in it or you disbelieve in it. At the end of the day, the thought of God have survived and lived, which tells you that there is something about that thought that is telling you that nature wants it to remain. Thank you very much. Feel free to ask any questions in any subject, because I know it all. All right, I see a hand there with a lot of energy.
Hi, I'm Liz from Brazil. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I'm thinking, I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
It was very crazy and interesting. And you talked about nudging systems in a direction that you believe more in. And I want to hear from your experience, that was a big nudge in the Arab
Yeah,
revolution.
that was not a nudge, just to be clear. That was an aggressive move towards the system. Just to call things for what they are. When you go and revolt against the system and you chant, people want to bring down the system, it's not nudging. That's bringing
Pushing.
it down. Yeah.
Okay. So from that pushing, what do you think are the main, maybe 2 or 3 lessons that you see from looking back to it? But in terms of what it became, not of what the process was. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to say that my ideas keep formulating and changing over time, so I'm just going to give you my last version of my reflections on this. In a zoomed out way, let's forget about the situation so that we're not emotionally attached to it. Let's think in abstract. When there's a very complicated network of nodes, and they're all connected in a certain way, and the system that connects them is not secure, and it's growingly becoming insecure, which means it's not doing the job it's supposed to do. Because we talk about security, and security is more about feeling safe. You just don't want to, you are not worried. You are in your place, and you don't feel threatened, basically. And when you have complicated systems that include 100 million people, and then you try to change those systems by bringing down the basic main nodes on the top, what happens if there are no alternative that is ready is ultimate chaos. And there were alternatives. We had the Muslim Brotherhood, we had the army eventually, and that kind of helped us be in a non-chaos environment, whatever that is. I'm not saying it's a good environment or a bad environment, but just an environment where we have not lost it like other countries. Which, by the way, it doesn't mean that I'm judging them too, because I feel very bad. It's a much harder problem for them to solve. And in my view right now, if you care about fixing a network or a system, in my view, the most efficient way is that you try and change it from inside. The second most efficient way is to try and create a support network on the side that supports that network, because you cannot be an individual from the outside trying to fix the inside. And you cannot be a network outside fighting a network that's inside that's much bigger than you. But what you can do is slowly get into trying to collaborate. But what if the network doesn't want to collaborate and actually goes after you? Then you have to resist. But if you jump into resistance right away, then you are missing many steps. I think there is something about, I always teach my kids, if you have 10 levels of escalations inside of you, you have 10 steps of anger, make sure not to skip one as you are engaging with someone who are making you angry. Because you just want to elevate one level after the other. Looks like someone pressing 10 all the time. If you press 10 all the time, let's talk networks. You are a node, you are producing energy. You're just going to overspend energy and get mad and not see a lot of things about reality, and reality will not get better for you, and then you'll keep insulting reality because you're angry, and it will just keep going that way, right? So in my view, that you start first not seeking conflict, you start trying to bring harmony. And then when they see conflict, you try to bring harmony. And when they see conflict, you try to bring harmony. And when they see conflict, you try to bring harmony. And when they see conflict, you try to bring harmony. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Olumidia from Nigeria. My question is, you actually answered the one when you said that we should not kill the system, we should keep the system. So when is the right time for young people to join the system? And when is the right time to kick out from? Because talking from African perspective, to join the politics is very, very, when you talk about money politics, you need some money to go into politics. So when is that right time for young people to actually join the system and using the system?
I wanna actually play with the words a little bit and tell you that the young people join the system as soon as they start created in their mom's body, because I joined the system when I was 1 year old. And my dad had to travel to Saudi Arabia and leave Egypt because economically he could not afford staying there in Egypt as a doctor. So he had to fly to the south of Saudi Arabia, and we lived just as my dad, myself, and my mother, and lived. I lived there for 13 years, and I joined the system there. I learned from the people. I learned from the culture. I grew up there. I was a bit in my own bubble, and the bubble was created by the system because my parents wanted to protect me from whatever that's in the system. So just generally speaking, I think one thing that will make us all calm down and understand that we should not be tough on ourselves is that you give yourself too much credit when you're actually angry at yourself. You're just ridiculous. That's how I think of it, because whatever that you are representing right now is just like when you do something that's wrong. Like in the past, I used to get like really angry at myself when I do something wrong and beat myself up. And I bet you, by design, most of you are like that. And the reason why I think it's by design most of you are like that, because by design most of you share a lot with me. This is not a coincidence. It's just as much as it sounds, it is a coincidence. But the reason I'm here is because I could connect with Peter, and you could connect with, like the network basically works. So back to your question, I think the young people should get as early as possible, but as in their position. The older need to respect their intelligence and creativity, but the younger need to respect the fact that they are naive and arrogant. And they are naive and arrogant not as an insult. That's actually part of the design. You are trying to explore life, so you are trying to not listen to, like think about the baby, no, don't do that. Hey, no, don't do that. They just want to keep exploring. And in a lot of ways, that's arrogance, because if you are not aware of your environment, if you don't really understand politics, it's kind of arrogant to be in the process and try and push for things you don't understand. In retrospect, I could see my arrogance now in 2011. Having said that, just to be clear about the message, I don't think I did something wrong at the time. I was just a manifestation of reality. I was one of the manifestations. Actually, I just happened to be one of the millions of people who manifested something, just like how your anger manifests something. To me, when I'm angry now, I know my anger manifests something inside of me. It doesn't manifest something about the person that that's details. That's the noise. The real signal is inside. The fact that I'm angry, it means my soul is angry at me for not knowing, for not aligning expectations with reality. It has nothing to do with the person in front of me. Because I'll tell you a proof. If you know someone is rude and always insult people whenever they see them, and they're nuts, you have someone that does that all the time, you're not really surprised by their behavior when you see it over and over again. It's whatever. You just get tolerate. You know how to not spend a dime of emotions on it. You understand that it is what it is. The reason why you get really angry is not because the person is doing something that annoys you. It's because the person is doing something that you have not predicted. And of course, that's not good for you, because if it's good for you, you get happy and excited and, oh my God, that's a great surprise. So I'll go back to the question and answer it in the logical way. I think people need to get involved as early as possible. I actually think politicians, good politicians, need to go to schools and teach kids what do they understand about politics, because the kids are sold scam on TV. Right? Do it. You are by yourself. You are the hero. You are just going to be able to do that. You are going to be able to do this. And that's all. Like I look at some of the videos that distribute across the internet, and those 5 minutes motivational videos where basically someone reduces their experience to language. But unfortunately, they're not educated enough to understand that the experience is far more complicated than how they describe it. And the mere fact of you experiencing something doesn't give you ability to analyze it. Those are two different functions. Because sometimes I would be in an experience and one of my friends tell me something I don't even see within the experience, just because my friend is not emotionally attached. Because if I feel insecure, I'm not going to see things, and I'm going to see things. And if the person is not that, this all noise is not in their direction. So I think that we have a responsibility to understand, to walk into these systems with a little bit more care. And we have a responsibility to start from now understanding that there is a difference between signal and noise. I mean, not from now. I know you all do it all the time. I'm sorry about that. I did not mean it in this way. I just meant that you want to basically, whatever I added to you that you didn't know, you want to incorporate it into your logical functions so that you can start, you will observe yourself being an attention seeker. Don't get mad at yourself. It's okay. Just observe it and just analyze it. Just see where it's going. Fly with it. Because that bird, when it jumped, you really are thinking that the bird is thinking, oh my God, what's happening? No, I mean, that animal is on nature. Their sittings are natural sittings. They're just being. They're just getting the hits because they understand it's part of the process. If they die, that's information for nature, for the next generation of birds that will come better. Because there's something about the experience of living for all of us that we pass our knowledge to our ancestors. We don't know in some places. Some people have religious beliefs that tells them what it is. But on the overall, there is something about all of us agreeing that that we want to preserve this place. We don't, despite the fact that we're dying. When our belief in the future dies, we start becoming more greedy. And we want to take as much as we can. And we don't trust others for the power. So we want to consolidate power within us. And once you consolidate power, what happens, and that's why it's very important to bring in young people early enough, not to all of a sudden empower them and make them Congress members at 25, because I don't think, that doesn't mean it's a bad idea that at 25 reaches Congress if they are geniuses. It doesn't matter. But it just means that at the end of the day, you need to have an experience that qualifies you to know the task that you're doing. And your claim of having that experience, you're just like how people sell that snake oil, fake it until you make it. And I bought that snake oil for a while. It's a terrible thing. It tells you be rehearsed in front of the people when you give a talk. Do not speak your mind. No, prepare. Prepare. Think before you act. Think before you act, because actually your logical mind is far more advanced than your spirit. That's exactly what we're being told. Think before you act, because your logical mind is far advanced than your spirit. But the reality is, your spirit is actually what provides you with happiness. So good luck thinking before you act and then worrying about what to do because you are not happy, and then you start thinking about how to fix it. So, you just go into cycles of doing bad things. People drink, can't sleep and then drink coffee so that they can stay up, so that they can, drink wine at night, so that they can get drunk, so that they can wake up in the morning and drink coffee, and then something is, I was looking at antidepressant statistics. It's appalling. 1 out of 8 Americans take antidepressants in 2014, above the age of 12. And it's just like we keep making bugs and then fixing them using a human way that probably it does. By the way, again, I'm not talking negatively about antidepressants because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not making assumptions. I'm just saying that it worries me that the number of people who are getting introduced to antidepressants is on the increase. It's 65% growth in America in just 10 years. I'm also not sure about the statistics. Please check it out. So what I'm trying to say is that whomever is telling you think before you act is probably not telling you the best answer. This is one of the answers, but you will be limited to your logical thinking. You will live life as a chessboard, and guess what? You will be surprised and annoyed a few times because it's not a chessboard. It's not a chessboard when I was walking in the street and I got kidnapped and tortured for 11 days. It was not a chessboard. It is what it is. I did something that at the end of the day instilled that reaction to happen. That reaction have created an enormous trauma inside of me, the likes of which I have never had. But whatever, I was able to get over it, and I feel privileged and lucky that I was able to get over, grateful, actually not lucky, because again, the language of coincidence and luck and whatever, I feel grateful for God for being able to pass it. What I understand right now is that the spirit always wants infinity. And if you try and feed it with the materialistic, you will start getting one, but then one will not be enough. You want two. And then two will not be enough, and you want three. And then you will wonder, why aren't you happy? You aren't happy because the game is not played like that. You can actually stop seeking the material, and the material will come to you. Stop seeking attention and educate yourself, because a lot of people who are attention seekers are only reading attention-seeking content, and that by design is not good content. It is mainstream bad content. Actually, I take it back. I don't mean it's actually, just the fact that it's mainstream means it has more signal than noise. But it's growingly having noise. And if you don't look at other perspectives, if you're not hearing, the way I formulated my perspectives had a lot to do with the fact that I just roll in life. I don't think before I act. And I know that that probably had costs on me. That probably had costs on others. But again, I don't give myself too much credit anyway, because I understand that I am just a small node in a huge network. There's I forgot the name of the philosopher that said, if a seagull moves its wing one way, just one wing, one way, it alters weather forever. Think about it, because that movement is energy spent, and that energy gets its way into the overall system, just like how my speech now is energy spent. And I have no idea how are you receiving it, so I'm going to get the next question.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Yaru. I'm an Alaska fellow from Uganda. I just wanted to expand more still on that point when the system is working, you're trying to fix the system and things are not working. So in 2016, I really wanted to run for a political office, but along the way, I felt like I was not ready. So in the process, I was approached. They asked me to coordinate the national campaign for the current president. And so the team that approached me, I joined them and I did the work, but I was trying to do the work in the right way. I felt like I needed to stand for the right thing only. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, along the way, I realized that the way they had designed the system was, even as you're doing the right thing, you find yourself in the middle of a mess. Mm-hmm. Because you're doing the right thing to feed some scandal that is taking place and you have no idea about it. So I found myself in a situation where I was put in the middle of a scandal, and they wanted me actually to almost be answerable, in court. They wanted to fix me in jail because of what I'd done. And I'm like, there's no way you're putting me in this kind of scandal, yet you know the truth. And so one thing I did best at that moment was, first of all, to clear my name. And I worked hard on that.
Sorry, to do what?
To clear my name.
Okay.
So when I cleared my name, finally the truth came out, and the guy was involved in all these scandals. They caught up with him, the system caught up with him. At that moment, I was scared. And I was like, if this is what politics means, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And I still had the desire for politics, but because of that small experience, doing the right thing but feeding into the wrong overall picture that you have no idea about. Yeah. So the best thing I had to do was to quit. I quit at that moment, but even after quitting, some few years down the road, I felt like I needed to participate, though not still with the same system, but I feel like if I find myself in a situation like that I've done the right thing.
I think I got not your question, I got the spirit of what you're trying to communicate.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, let me communicate what you said triggered, brought to my thoughts. I actually think that the word "the right thing" is a loaded word, because what's the right thing? Is it the right thing for you, or the right thing for the group, or the right thing for the group from your perspective? but not necessarily from their perspective? Or is it the right thing from, at the end of the day, there is infinite ways to look at any object. Because there's infinite, like this, you can look from all sides and see a completely different view. So I always have now a tendency to believe that we have to be very careful of what we say as the right thing. Because if it's the right thing that helps the wrong people, then it's probably not the right thing by design. Because the right thing would help the wrong people do the right thing. That's the right thing. And that's why I think when people work within systems, if they are working within systems, their objective is to build trust within the system so that at the end of the day, the system trusts them enough for them to start knowing how to interact with it. If you are the kind that you cannot do it and you feel you feel like your battle is outside, well, that's your feeling. And by the way, no one should tell you how you should do it. Like if I tell you now, oh, go back and get into what do I know? What do I know about you? What do I know about the system that you are trying to change? What do I know about your culture? I only know what I'm like socialized to know. Like if I met a couple of people or I had a conversation. So I cannot give an advice like that. But what I can say is that for me, I follow my feelings. I follow my feelings, and I don't think before I act. I act, and then I observe, and then I respond, and then I learn. I act and observe and respond and learn. Because the real problem is not in thinking before you. You think before you act to minimize the errors. But I'll tell you what happens when you think before you act. Because it's rather entertaining. When you think before you act, you are creating if statements. If this, don't do that. Like let's say a guy would say, I only want to marry a woman with a blonde hair. Or a woman say, I want to marry a man with a black hair. Once that restriction is set up, what happens? Limitations, because that's what the logic does. It discriminates. The logic main job, you have eyes, and the logic main job is to decide where it should look. You are where you look, where you draw. Your intentionality happened through your consciousness, happened through your conscious mind. And if you think before you act, what you are doing is you are limiting your ability to think into whatever the if statements could generate for you. Some people have better if statements. They're more wide and they have much more functions, but that's great. But that's only like 1 meter to the infinite. That you can get out of it. I've been looking for a job, and I have not been getting a job for a long time. I've went to interviews, and it's been terrible. I don't know how to connect with people in the interviews, because at the end of the day, I believe I was very angry at the time. I'm angry because I got to know a lot inside of me, and I was very impatient about bringing it out. And I'm still angry, by the way, and you could probably tell. Not. But the one thing that happened is that I keep looking for ideas, and I just came to an idea a few days ago. I will not tell you about it because I don't want to sell you on it, because this idea is not to be advertised. This idea is to be seek it. You have to look for it. It will not look for you, I guess. Or I just decided now. Anyway, next question. How much time we have? We gotta go, huh?
I wish we had more. Maybe last, is this on? Maybe last question? And
Yeah,
then,
so I can end on
and
a
then we'll
positive
transition
note
to
so
the
that
break.
we do it like
Please,
they do
yes.
it, Yeah.
So I just had a question, because you talked a lot about the objective perspective, and so I just wanted to know, in your experience, was there ever a time where there were negative implications of merely looking at something in an objective perspective? Because we're humans, right? And so in certain circumstances, especially in isolated situations, when we're talking about civic engagement, you have to be able to relate. And a lot of times you have to be able to relate to an experience of an individual to be able to give them the importance that helping them is significant and that the work can be done, and giving them that importance. And so at what point in your experience?
Yeah, you touched a great point, actually, and I like for it to be a last ending, because I think a lot of us here are very sensitive people. And that's why we're in the business, in the business that we're in, because we feel the pain. We understand what does it mean to be exposed to injustice when you don't have power. And you kind of feel that you have power, and that's why you are angry at the fact that you have power and you are supposed to do something about whatever that you're seeing that's wrong. I do think that There's a book I was reading a few months ago, I highly recommend, called The Laws of Human Nature by an author called Robert Greene. And he talks about sensitivity as a superpower. Your ability to sense means that you can feel the environment and you can know how the environment is changing. And the environment here is not just the people, it's also people, nature, animals. That sensing ability is highly valuable. It's superpower to the world because we need to know what's happening. You know, the birds, now we're busy with our phones, but in the past 1,000 years ago, the birds was so important in the lives of people living because if the birds all of a sudden start flying fast and screaming, something bad is happening. We need to evacuate. We follow the birds. The birds that's why we love the sounds of birds, because when they are available and safe and secure, they give us peace. We know that we should be safe and secure. The trick, though, is to turn your sensitivity outwards. It's not to, there's a book I also highly recommend that I forgot the title of the book. It's about, and the name of the author, but I will still recommend the book. It has something to do that we should not be empathetic, we should be rationally compassionate, and Google will do the job for you. And I need to remember that book because I really like the idea. There's a difference between being empathetic and rationally compassionate. I don't need to feel the pain of the poor person. Actually, that's not my job. If I feel their pain, I'm actually taking away from my energy into something that's not that productive. I just need to feel a projection of their pain. I need to understand their pain. I need to have the peace inside of me that enable me to connect with that pain, and then I rationally help them. And by the way, not necessarily always by doing what they want. Because at the end of the day, I'll talk about myself. When I'm angry or sad or stressed or insecure or feeling threatened, I'm not in my best position to think. I actually would appreciate someone to reduce the number of decisions that I need to make right now. Not to take away my agency, because there's a huge difference, because I do not appreciate anyone taking my agency, and I stand to defend it by my life. But it's just more of like, there is some problem that I'm facing and I'm aware of that problem, and it's better for others to get and engage with me. If those others are empathetic and crying next to me, I can tell you by design, they are going to be able to solve it, because that level of power and they're going to be able to engage, not solve it, to engage positively, but they're reducing their ability to solve. So I would say we need to learn how to evaluate our emotions all the time and be aware and understand that there is a state where you can feel the pain of someone without exposing yourself to it. With that, I just want to end with a final note. I know I took more than the time I should speak. I just wanted to say that at the end of the day, what I learned in my experience in the last 2 years, because I was going through a very hard depression, and I did not, the way it elaborated to me is that I did not take anyone's help except friends. And one of them actually have helped me tremendously. He lives in Amsterdam, so despite the fact that we were away, the internet have given me that opportunity to be able to connect with my friend. He was the soul that understood me at the time. He had, of course, anyone could have had the fix of anyone else, because we're humans. We can connect with each other, with no awkwardness if we want to. But at the end of the day, that soul have helped me. And it made me understand that at the end of the day, our destiny is one. We're all one. Republicans, Democrats, feminists, and people who are happy with their masculinity, religious people and angry atheists, Chinese, North Koreans, Americans, Iranians, Egyptians, we're just all one. And there is a shared common thing that has been given to us for thousands of years. And by the way, we need to start giving our ancestors a little bit of credit and respect them more than that. Thank you very much.